Hello and welcome to Deconstructing the Construct, episode 74. Today I'd like to share predominantly other people's material, people that I know personally, people who have shared outside of, say, the members as well as from within, but because we do all see, experience, visualize things in our own very unique ways and express them in our own unique ways. And although I think everyone is essentially feeling the same thing, they're all being expressed differently. And it's my hope that some of this might speak to you in a way that, say, the way I express doesn't. And so I've got bits and pieces from a bunch of different people. And I want to start with my friend Simon. Simon did a painting back in 2012. As you can see, it's a spiral painting and it has 33 squares in it, which at first was just kind of disturbing to him. And he tried to do this a bunch of different ways, but he knew the Fibonacci kind of spiral was important. And every time he tried it in different ways, he always ended up with 33 squares. And he didn't want that at first because of the 33 Masonic sort of connection, but his wife pointed out to him that his, life number is 33, so maybe just go with it. The pictures are both very personal and collective. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit to these last few. For Simon, the last 4 pictures are the last 4 months, or from March, actually. He and his wife spending time in the garden and the family in the garden. He is a musician, so he was one of the first people sort of affected with all the clubs and pubs and everything closing down because he's a live performer. So he was suddenly at home. But there was also a big movement. A lot of people were wanting to spend time in their garden and start putting in veggie gardens. And that's where a lot of people have spent their time in lockdown. You've also got the next one there, which is a person sitting at a computer. Now, when I first saw this, which was some time ago, no, actually, the first time I saw this painting was years ago, but when it was brought to my attention again, probably a year ago, I thought, the Anons, that's what that represents. And that would be on the collective, but on the personal for him, it's also meant this is this period where he's been at home alone, researching on his computer, as are a lot of people. The next one, the city that you can see. The other day, there was that story that went around, that breaking news clip of a city, which is claimed is actually a screenshot from the movie World War Z. I saw that just prior to looking at this painting again. And to me, the similarities are rather remarkable. And the last picture is of a person going through a portal. This picture was done in 2012. He feels that he is living those last 4 squares, or last 3 with the 4th one to come. He sort of feels like you can see shapes in between the images. In this case, it's a couple of squares that we're actually in that space right now. And I just noticed it goes 3, 2, 1. Okay. So that's Simon's piece. And then we have Curtis, who created this image, I don't know, a year or so ago. And the small sphere represents 0 point. And he sent it to me the other day because he said, we are here now. We are at 0 point. I said, oh, did you watch the last DTC? He said, no. What? I said, well, it's called Welcome to 0 point. This again, and the stuff that's more public, like Bashar, I've been trying to find the clip, but he said in April, the end of April, that we are currently going through the eye of the needle, that it's a 6-month process, and that we are halfway through it, which brings us to the end of July, which I'll get to. And then we have Russ. This image. And the best way for me to explain what you're looking at is to use my hands. If you look at the current image for this DTC, the cube with the 2 lines going through it. One of them is, say, the organic, original path in and out of the construct. You entered the game, you played the game, and then you left the game. There has been an overlay, an inorganic, orchestrated, whatever, path that did that. Crossed it, blocked it, looped us in. They locked the cube. First they cubed the sphere, and then they locked the cube. The original path stays in place. This one is getting weighted. So as these events that are occurring continue to occur, what is looking to be negative, it weights the bar. Okay? Every time something else is exposed, every time it's revealed, every time people's choices are seen, all of this, it's like it's acting as a weight on a counter lever. And it's weighting the bar, and the bar will eventually do this and separate. And when it separates, it creates a tunnel, a clear path. And that because what we're seeing, and I do believe somebody said it, maybe it was Sophia Love, who said it this way: it's oneness and division simultaneously. Okay, because what I'm seeing is oneness in the sense of all of the humans are coming together in a sense of community and oneness. Everything that's not human, and a lot falls into that category, but that's just a big broad headline for what people call the NPCs, that I call the bots, for the virus in form, for people who say were heart source beings, but their consciousness has gone home and the vessel has been utilized by the virus. Those who have just sold out to it all, those who are too heavily infected to do anything else, those who are just not just not human. They too are kind of finding their own oneness in a way. They're all sort of forming this big glob of a consciousness, but the two are separate, very separate. And people are not making choices anymore, I don't think. I still feel that the choices were made some time ago, but it all has to play out in 3D. So we've been given opportunities to see what choices we made, facing ourselves, hall of mirrors, right? Another piece that was brought to me by a friend, John, who I haven't spoken to for about a year, I don't think. This is all playing out as he believed and saw that it would back in November. For him, the dark is being starved right now on every level. And something that didn't even occur to me, which, facepalm, I learnt back in 2012, and some of you may have known this for a really long time and it might be news to others, but I learnt back in 2012 that all government buildings, churches, courthouses, pretty much all government associated buildings have an antenna on them that is a harvester of the energy that gets built up inside these places. And that energy is then directed where they want it to go. So in a church, for example, regardless of who you're praying to, that energy is being siphoned elsewhere. And we know that the stadiums and the big arena concerts and your Beyonce style extravaganza concerts are huge rituals. Well, they can't do those at the moment either. The big football games and the halftime shows, big rituals, they can't do that anymore. They're being starved both energetically right now as well as physically. What's happening instead is people are at home continuing their practice, doing their prayers, doing their meditations, doing their thing, and it's a pure experience. They're connecting truly with what they want to connect with, and it's not being siphoned or harvested. It's not being programmed or manipulated by somebody standing up there in front of them. It's a more pure experience for the person, and it's a form of starvation for the others. The events of the last week, for me personally, have given me more and more confidence or certainty around what I said in the last DTC about time. That this moment, that this whole thing should have ended in 2012, the end of 2012. But it was locked. That this moment of time needed to be stretched out. It's been over 8 years, and now it's coming back, but it's rebounding back very quickly. It's not 8 years and then 8 years back. It's 8 years and then, and it's taking us back to the energy, the space of 2012. So I'm curious to know whether of late you've had things come up in your life taking you back to that time, being reminded of what was going on for you back then, or what you were into back then, or where you were in your own journey back then. 2012. It's the 2012 time, space, energy. We're going back to when this should have ended. There's something about 13, the number 13, that is the two things that are, how do I put this? As I said, a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of shows ago, that certain downloads or insights stay with you. They're really powerful. So one of the ones a friend of mine got a while back was alignments are necessary. And there's something about the number 13 connecting with an alignment. Now we know that the proverbial they have tried to demonize 13. They don't want us to associate with 13 or familiarize ourselves with 13 or focus on 13. There is something about 13 o'clock that is like an alignment, a spot in, it's like we skip over it all the time. We go from 12 back to 1. We're missing the 13 because the 13 is the opening. 13's been a fascination for me since the late 90s when I found out my Mayan galactic signature, according to Jose Aguilas, is a 1313. It's a red cosmic skywalker. So that's when I started looking into the number 13. There's something about that movie, The 13th Floor. And thanks to Yellow Rose leaving a comment on one of her videos, she talked about the Venus pentagram, which is also called the Venus rose or Venus flower, which is an 8-year cycle that Venus does. The one that the Venus is currently doing began in 2012, ends today. Speaking of Yellow Rose, I know in the past she's talked about spiritual debt, that the dark side have accumulated a lot of debt, spiritual debt, but they've somehow managed to transfer it onto the people. And what I see happening now, with the governments paying people to stay at home, to keep their jobs, is the debt, the spiritual debt, is what it represents to me, is being transferred back to the side of the books it should be on, which again is doing this. What I talked about the projector being in Antarctica last time, and it literally is the eye, and there's something about it being like that operating like a camera lens, and there is a blink of an eye because it's like the camera shutter going on and off. That is this moment that's connected to 13. When we reach 13 o'clock, the shutter goes. And that's when we can flip this. I have another friend, Kim, who has spent the last 3 nights, all night, being shown how the construct kind of operates in terms of people's paths. And she keeps seeing them as bombs. It sounds like a game of Minesweeper. There are bombs with smiley faces and there are bombs with sad faces, and they're just put in your path and designed to go off at predetermined times, and it is how we respond to them determines our path, how we navigate our path. It's not specific to any person, that just seems to be how this game is currently operating. She keeps getting the message that the circuitry is intricate. Now, from what I'm seeing, and I've kind of given this analogy before with the playing a video game and you're working your way up through the levels of the game. Not everybody's on the same level. There was another visual that said the same thing from somebody else that I've shared, one of my friends, who's like, we're all in the same skyscraper building, but everybody's on different levels and just working their way up to the rooftop. But it's like leveling up, and the level, as this moment is sort of collapsing back in, we are being given one opportunity after another to level up really quickly through the game. And for example, people who 2 or 3 weeks ago were still potentially believing what the mainstream media was saying about COVID, what they're now saying about these riots and how they're dealing with the riots is making them go, you know what? No. Everyone seems to have their own trigger for their leveling up. So for those who have worked their way up to where we're at, I don't know, whatever level that the highest players are playing at, what could be next for them, because everything is a level up and an expansion of consciousness. You level up, your consciousness expands. You level up, your consciousness expands. Is evidence of the Neo program, evidence of superpowers, evidence of what we would call miracles. For those who are ready for that level, and it doesn't mean you can't go from, level 23 to level 42 real quick. Because the energies are supporting that right now as everything's collapsing. How quickly we can level up right now is completely up to us. It's how we respond and navigate these bombs. Everything so far this year keeps reinforcing for me that most of the messages from home, most of the stuff I've said in these DTCs, most of the insights that have come out of the work of the group have been deltas. I keep getting pointed back to a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And there are things that were said that are so relevant, more so now than they were then. Messages from home, same. So if Bashar's 6-month journey through the eye of the needle, what I'm calling traversing 0 point, lasts for 6 months, and that takes us to the end of July. Well, some of you all know that Lilu gave me the July 31st date back in 2018. Now, I didn't put it out at the time. Didn't want to. Didn't feel right. It was leaked out, and then I had to address it. And I don't know really why I didn't want to. Because it's not like me. I'm a bit of a blabbermouth and tend to put everything out. But it feels more relevant now than it did then, I think, is what it boils down to. I've had people have dreams about a celebration, and they know in the dream that the date is July 31st. I've had multiple people express to me experiences that they've had that point to that date. And I know some people are very clear about the date shall not be known. I get that. And I don't know what it's going to be a date for, because this still feels like a 2-step process. For example, when people talk about the event, most people have an image of the event being the moment of ascension, or when this place closes, or we go home, or whatever. And it's just sort of broadly referred to as the event. But for the sake of clarity of language, 2 things. When this does this, which according to Russ, you can see it happening, it's very, very close. That could trigger an event. There is an event, And what I mean by that is, well, what I don't mean by that is the, in all caps, event where, I don't know, fireworks go off and whatever. There is an event that feels very, very close. And the image I keep seeing is it stops everybody in their tracks. Now, I know that there are rumours and speculation around JFK Jr. still being alive. And as a conspiracy theory goes, it's a pretty good one. It's got legs. But if you can imagine the impact of JFK Jr. being alive, he publicly comes out and declares himself, tells the story about why he had to fake his own death, what he's been doing ever since, who he's been working with, what his plans are, what's really been going on. It's whatever this thing is, it's that level. It's something that matches the flavor of that. I'm not saying it is that. I'm saying that the bigness and the flavor and the impactfulness and all of that of something of that happening is what this feels like. And it's like people mid Molotov cocktail throw just go, what? You know, it feels like it will happen at in the midst of a lot of chaos, and just everything goes quiet as everyone goes into shock. That's an event that feels like it's coming very soon. There's also what Russ calls the flip. So when this happens and a clear tunnel path is formed, we exit. And I think that's what he's calling the flip, and what he refers to as like the event. I'm hoping all these different ways of explaining this and just letting you know that this is only a couple of people, but many people are having insights that, even though they're quite unique in their flavor and verbiage and imagery, are all sort of saying the same thing. Everything's pretty close. It's pretty close. The fact that over the last, no more than a week, but probably not even, like 4 or 5 days, I'm starting to feel the 2012 now, I think means that this is collapsing faster and faster and faster. It by no means means that we have to wait until December 21st of this year for anything significant at all. End of July feels important. But what's going to happen between now and then is just more of this, more of this, more of this, more exposure, more expansion, more leveling up, more events to trigger the leveling up. So in a way, it's like the worse things get, the better things get. Everything is tipping the scale. Everything is unlocking the gate. So I think that's all. It's probably not. I've probably forgotten a bunch of stuff that I wanted to share with you, but there you go. See you soon. Bye for now.